Hello and welcome to the class. Today our class will be discussing on determinants of voting behaviors in India, the role of ethnicity, region and language. These are the three important concepts and we will be discussing that. The objective of our today's class is to understand the concept of ethnicity, region and language in Indian context of voting. How these categories, how this concept influence the pattern of electoral behaviors, also to understand the changing nature and meanings of these categories and its impacts on Indian polity in general. As you know, India is of course a very diverse country, huge diversity of culture, religion, language, ethnicity, regions, geographical landscape, food habits, occupation and so on and so forth. Contemporary ethnic India is a land of enormous genetic, cultural and linguistic diversity. The people of India are culturally stratified as tribals as well as non-tribals. Tribal constitute more than 8% of the total India's populations, and non-tribal you have huge numbers of non-tribals, and within non-tribal there are different kind of groups and subgroups. There are more than 450 tribal communities in India who speaks more than 750 dialects that can be classified into the following three largely category: Austroasiatic or Dravidian and the Tibetan Burman community or the linguistic groups. India is an amalgamation of unions, what generally people call what is India. The India is basically a union of regions, amalgamation of different regions, numerous cultural, linguistic and geographical regions. Each region had its own unique history, their own socio-economic status as well as the political economy and political history. At the time of India's independence, at the time of in 1947, there were more than 550 princely states of different shapes and different size and statures and different nomenclatures. More than 550 princely states were there and under various rajas and maharajas. For example, in West Bengal, we know Coach Bihar. In Odisha, there were different states. Sikkim was a different state. Like this, there are Travancore, and in Kerala, there are different types of different kinds of state. Hyderabad was an independent state that time. So there are like 500, more than 550 states. The constitutions of India acknowledge this enormous diversity and ensured inclusive mode of governance and institutional settings. So looking at largely in India, we can call India as basically have all the characters to call it a subcontinent. That's why we call Indian subcontinent. While ensuring the equal rights and equal opportunity by the Constitution of India to all citizens, the Constitution of India categorically recognize the cultural, linguistic, regional and religious diversity and of course caste-based hierarchies and inequalities. The examples of Article 341 and Article 342 of India's constitutions guarantees the reservations, which we call it positive discriminations, for the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribe in the public employment, educations and political representations. The constitutional promises of equality, the constitution's promises of equality, of democracy, social justice and dignity not only ensure the equality in formal sense, rather it has understood equality in a substantial form. The constitution has also created multiple legal and institutional structures to accommodate various socially excluded groups, including linguistic and religious minority. The Article 30 of Indian constitutions ensure legal right of minorities to establish and administer educational institutions. All minorities, whether it is based on religion or language, shall have the right to establish and administer their education institution of their choice. For example, if you see in India, the St. Stephen College or Aligarh Muslim University or Khalsa College, they are all examples of minority institutions in India. There are linguistic minority institutions as well, there are religious minority institutions as well. Constitutional mandates, if you look at India's constitutions, the 8th schedule of India's constitutions recognize India's languages. The 8th schedule of the constitutions consists of around 22 languages: Assamese, Bengali, Gujarati, Hindi, Kannada, Kashmiri, Konkani, Malayalam, Manipuri, Marathi, Nepali, Odia, Punjabi, Sanskrit, Sindhi, Telugu, Urdu, Bodo, Santali, and Maithili, and Dogri, including Dogri. Though few of them recently included, but there is a long list. The list, there are different groups, linguistic groups. They have been demanding their language should be included into the 8th schedule of India's constitution. So there has been a continuous demand from different groups across India. Based on linguistic identity and assertion, the government of India, the union government, constituted state reorganizations commissions to decide the boundaries and territory of states or even the formation of new states. Therefore, linguistic identity and movement play a crucial role in the politics of state formations or inclusion exclusions of a state boundary. Let me give an example to make you clear. The examples of Punjab, Akali Dal, basically a Sikh dominated political party, have actively in Punjab, they actively sought to create a Punjabi Suba or a Punjabi majority province, and this new state would be a Sikh majority state. That has caused concern among the Punjabi Hindus. The Sikh leaders tactically stressed the linguistic basis of the demand while downplaying the religious basis, a state where the Sikh distinct identity could be preserved. So this is the twist, how you put your demand, not maybe necessarily from a religious point of view, but you are putting from a linguistic point of view. The linguistic assertion linked with ethnic or religious identity creates a new kind of a politics, and that we see the Akali Dal or in Punjab, that we see in different parts of India, including here in West Bengal, the Rajbongshi or the Kamtapuri and the Gorkha movement. I'll come later into that. There is a 6th schedule and regional autonomy. In Indian constitutions, we know there is a 5th schedule and 6th schedule. And this schedule is quite important because the constitution of India, as India is coming from a very different, diverse political background, different institutional setup and structures, the constitution of India basically categorize different regions, different places, territory, and they have given autonomy to those territories as well. This 5th and 6th schedule have provisions to administrations and control of scheduled areas and scheduled tribe areas. 6th schedule envisages the power of autonomous district council within the autonomous area and make laws of the land, management of forest, of course except reserve forest, management of forest. As you know, large number of Indian citizens, they are the forest dwellers and they live in forest, they are historically staying in that place. Therefore, the management of forest, regulations on trade by persons not being local scheduled tribe. If you go to the hilly areas in India and different towns in the northeast and many other parts, we see the non-tribals cannot own or occupy land over there. Therefore, so that their geographical distinctiveness doesn't get disturbed. Scheduled tribes, appointment of traditional chief, headman, inheritance of property, marriage, divorce, social customs, and establishment and maintenance of primary schools, market, taxation, issues, lease of extraction of minerals. These are the very important aspects. Almost every aspect of their public life, whether it's education, whether it is their local governance, institutions, local headmen, inheritance law, marriage, social customs, has been governed by their own different personal laws and their own customary laws. Examples, we could give examples like the Bodoland territorial areas in district in the Assam, the Karbi Anglong in Assam, the Khasi and Garo Hills district in Meghalaya. This is also a name of a tribe as well. The Chakma and Mara districts in Mizoram. These are the examples. There are many such examples, because these are the examples which we could give to understand the very nature of different autonomous council. In West Bengal, we see the Gorkha territorial administration GTA region in Darjeeling, which is also administered by the local Gorkha community of that particular areas. Ethnicity, if you go to the ethnicity, as because our title is ethnicity, region and language, if you look at ethnicity is basically pertains to word ethnic, which are distinctions of mankind based on race. Ethnicity now lost its original connotations. It is now employed in a broader sense to signify self-consciousness of a group of people united or closely related or shared experience such as language, religious belief, common heritage. As we all know, with the development of science and all, we understand that the pure ethnic bloods and all is no longer exist in any parts of the world. So therefore, ethnicity in its real sense, is basically now used in a broader, more broader sense. Ethnicity does play an important role in many states in India. There are presence of large number of political parties, ethnic based political parties in the northeast part, including in many other parts of India, and they play also influencing role in determining the voting behaviors and shaping the politics of that particular region. Ethnic polity led to the rise of what you call narrow definition of citizenship and does not go along with the normative concept of democracy and civic solidarity. The Son of the Soil movement in Assam, the nativist Shiv Sena movement in Maharashtra, this could be the examples of ethnic movement in the recent past in Indian political history. The ethnic conflict and the Son of the Soil movement, Professor Myron Weiner, the study, the relationship between internal migrations and ethnic conflict in India is an exceptional for two reasons. It focuses on intercultural and interstate migrations throughout the nation rather than merely local or provincial phenomena, and it examines both the social and political consequences of India's inter-ethnic migrations. Professor Myron Weiner, examines selected regions in which migrants dominate the modern sector of the economy. He described the forces that led individual Indian citizens to move on linguistic cultural region to another in search of better opportunities, and he attempts to explain their emergence at the top of the occupational hierarchy. In addition, the author provides an account the way in which the indigenous ethnic groups, which he calls the son of the soil, attempt to use political power to overcome their fear of economic defeat and the cultural subordinations by more enterprising, more highly skilled, better educated migrants. So this is the case of the insider outsiders. We see in Maharashtra that is an anti-Hindi people or anti-South Indian and especially anti-UP and anti-Bihari agitations in Maharashtra. The same thing we witness in the global scale. If you look at United States as well, there also we see an insider outsider debates. So this has been a global popular upsurge, a global kind of an issue. In Germany, in European country, we see the issues of refugee and migrants, and they created another kind of problem. In addressing this fundamental clash between migrants, claims to equal access to their country and the claims of the local groups to equal treatment, the protections by the state, Professor Weiner considers some of the ways in which government policy makers might achieve a greater equality among the ethnic group without simultaneously restricting the spatial and social mobility some of its own people. Professor Kanchan Chandra, she is a famous political scientist, and in her book called Why Ethnic Parties Succeed, in that book, patronage and the title of the book is Why Ethnic Parties Succeed, Patronage and Ethnic Headcounts in India, and she explored the study of the variations in the performance of 4 ethnic parties in India. This book developed a theory of ethnic party performance which she calls as patronage democracy, a family of democracy which mark pattern of political behavior as well as new interpretations of democracy in India. She argued that voters in patronage democracy choose between the parties by conducting ethnic head count rather than comparing policy platforms or ideological positions. They formulate preferences across parties by counting the heads of co-ethnic parties across party personnel, preferring that party that provide greater representations to their co-ethnic groups. Therefore, in ethnic party, they have their own plus point rather than an ideological or policy evaluations. They largely look at their ethnicity as a prime sort of determinants for influencing the voting patterns and voting behaviors. Well, another important aspect is region, and in India, as I told you, India is an amalgamation of regions. There are multiple regions. India is basically a union of regions. Each region had its own unique social, cultural and political history. The process of democratizations, economic performances, rise of sharp inequalities, breakdown of old Congress system, as Professor Rajni Kothari coined the term Congress system, in the post-Nehruvian era has led to the regionalization of Indian polity and the rise of regional and sub-regional identity. Professor Ashutosh Kumar has argued from a dominant national perspective, political analysis in India has gradually shifted its unit of study to the state level. There remains a dearth of literature, but that employs intra-state or interstate regional perspective in a comparative political framework. So, this is an important framework to understand, to analyze Indian politics, not looking from a New Delhi point of view or from a central point of view. Rather, you democratize the very perspective of Indian politics by taking state as an unit and intra-state region as a unit of studying or approaching the politics. India has been witnessing the onslaught of democratic process that have resulted into the reconfiguration of politics and economy. Among these processes, the most significant has been the assertions of identity groups, different identity assertions. There has been struggles around the assertiveness and conflicting claims of identity groups and struggles among them, often fought on the lines of region, religion, language, sometimes even dialect, caste, including community. These struggles have found expressions in the change mode of electoral representations that has brought the local or regional into focus with the politically dominant groups and regions finding voices. A more genuine representative democracy has led to the sharpening of the line of distinctions between or among the identity groups and the region. Professor Ashutosh Kumar basically largely argues the concept of region within regions and what should be the focus of discipline in the future if it has to make advances. The argument herein, there need to be a greater effort of comparativist to go beyond the state and focus exclusively on sub-regions within state, both as relatively more sub-regions within a particular state across states, especially those sub-regions and straddle state boundaries. Let me give an example. For example, in West Bengal, if you look at the regions within West Bengal, we have a North Bengal region. North Bengal region not necessarily only an administrative region, but there is also a cultural region as well. The North Bengal region consists of Malda, South Dinajpur, North Dinajpur, Jalpaiguri, Alipurduar, Coach Bihar and Darjeeling and other districts. So this district comprises the North Bengal region. Also in West Bengal, we have a region called South Bengal region and Paschim region. So therefore, just in totality, if you study West Bengal from a homogeneous point of view, we may not understand the complexities and intra-regional inter-regional and intra-state inequalities. Maybe North Bengal compared to South Bengal or Calcutta and suburbs are more absolutely less developed and less, in that sense, the allocation of budgeting, allocation of resources, you see an asymmetry into that. Therefore, Ashutosh Kumar argue that the recent decades there have been a witness to emergence of geographically, linguistically, culturally and historically constituted distinct sub-regions within which have acquired political science as a democracy and widened and deepened in the concept. Therefore, in order to understand the changing notions or changing reality of Indian politics, one has to deploy the category of region within region using sub-region. Maharashtra, if you take a case of Maharashtra is one of the most prosperous state in terms of GDP, in terms of net asset and income. But if you look at Maharashtra, going beyond Bombay and Pune or Mumbai and Pune, if you go to the Vidarbha region or the Aurangabad region, that region is suffering a lot in terms of underdevelopment. We see and news keep coming on the distress, agricultural distress. The farmers are forced to commit suicide. So in that sense, if you look Maharashtra from a sort of an homogeneous or from a national point of view, then Maharashtra is a prosperous state. But if you look Maharashtra from again inter-regional or from a regional point of view, the intra-regional inequality, then we get a different nuance understanding. Therefore, the sub-regions have emerged as an important political regions after long decades of democratizations and now show sharp ethnic, communal, caste cleavages as well as other socio-political cleavages such as the regional, urban-rural divide, the unevenness of public and private investment, the growth and development, and unequal access to political power. If you look at Andhra Pradesh, former Andhra Pradesh, when I'm talking about Andhra Pradesh, is a united one, Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, you see the entire resource and wealth is largely in Hyderabad and the coastal region. So Rayalaseema, Telangana region were somehow sort of excluded from the entire development process, sometimes from the imaginations as well. The rise of sub-regional polity. The emergent sub-regional consciousness from a perceived sense of discriminations. The rise of sub-regional consciousness comes from a perceived sense of discriminations and the hands of the people, the leadership from the stronger sub-region that has been accentuated with a growing spatial economy, disparity under a market economy that believes in betting on the strong strategy. This strategy has found expression in demand of new states, which provide fertile ground for comparative research in studying the shifting basis of such demand and inmate from different sub-regions in the form of movement that receive support from sub-regional level parties and leadership, such as Gorkha Janmukti Morcha, leading the movement of creation of Gorkhaland. Most of these sub-regions such as Vidarbha, Gorkhaland, Bodoland, Bundelkhand have the poorer with more deeply entrenched caste hierarchy and faster growing populations, and overall have fared less well in terms of human development. Ironically, sub-regions are better connected by roads and sea roads or closer to bustling marketplaces and business centers, have also been demanding preferential treatment and even asking for separate statehood. In the case with the demand of separate Harit Pradesh, from affluent western UP. Yet outcomes of a new economic policy have been the emergence of distinct economic regions such as National Capital Territory, which called NCR, the standing state of the union territory boundaries, as well as emergence of happening cities such as Bengaluru, Chennai, Hyderabad and economic mega centers having intercity comparison within the country and beyond. Language has been the major issues of sensitive debates in the post-colonial India. The question of linguistic identities, language are linked to the idea of dignity and recognitions. The language standardizations of the country has shaped by political, economic and cultural factors, and in fact the language standardization is a part of more general strategy of the state rationalism. State rationalism suggests that to some extent language standardization is necessary for the administration of society efficiently and orderly functioning. We see more Sanskritization of different language. Many programs have been applied in order to promote Hindi in public or semi-public and private organizations. We see in 1960 the Kendriya Hindi Shikshan Mandal in Agra, the Akhil Bharatiya Hindi Sanghastha Sangh in 64. The Central Hindi Committee was set up in 67 under the chairmanship of then Prime Minister. Throughout the promotion of Hindi language, planners have been given more attention to the codifications and form of standard Hindi rather than practicing Hindi by large number of people, which we generally call Hindustani. The result is a new grammatical rules, new sound of Sanskritizations of Hindi and artificially increased lexical stock. The set of new barriers between the newly standardized Hindi and commonly used Hindi in India. So therefore, the language controversy begins in 5 years after the passage of right at the time of formation of constitutions. Initially, non-Hindi leaders were hoping that the implementation of Hindi would be persuasion but not impositions, but they have seen that there are huge kind of an imposition, allegedly impositions of Hindi by the North Indian state or by the Union of India to the non-Hindi speaking states. In the fact that the source of opposition was basically because of the cultural and the historical background of the state. For example, the southern state have been a long traditions of suspicion against the north. This suspicion was existing even during the national movement. For the south, the north symbolizes the potential source of Aryan dominations. Using Aryan symbols by the north contributed to the alienation of Muslims. In general, as far as teaching in Hindi is concerned, we see oppositions on the state on the basis of south versus north, coastal states versus hinterland, Dravidian language family versus Indo-Aryan language family. As a result, the rivalry, Madras, Tamil, Manipur, Nagaland and some union territories like Goa, Daman and Diu dropped teaching Hindi and admitted English as a link language. The another reason of opposition to Hindi as a new imposition of Hindi due to official language. That meant people who speak Hindi would have more power in social, economic, cultural and political life. That was the relations between English speaker, people who were usually higher class, and non-Hindi speaker in the past. Well, ethnicity, region and language does play a role not only to increasing the blocks but also influence the political process. With the rise of multiple forms of social identities and cleavages, these categories does impact in the electoral politics in different states in India. For example, the Kamtapuri or Rajbongshi questions in Coach Bihar or North Bengal, the questions of Urdu language, the Santhali or Nepali language among the tribal communities, all these issues does influence the electoral behavior in different parts of India. And to sum up, I would like to say ethnicity, region and language, combining these three concepts, it creates a distinct kind of a political identity. It creates a distinct political categories, which categories sometimes directly influence the voting behavior, sometimes indirectly influence the voting patterns and behavior. That we see if you look at many different states, whether it is Karnataka, whether it is Andhra Pradesh, whether it is Telangana Andhra debate, whether it is Gorkhaland, whether it is Bodoland, we see a distinct form of not only about ethnicity in a broader sense, but it's also about the language issues, it's also about the issues of identity and also about the issues of region. Therefore, amalgamations of region, amalgamations of language and the ethnicity, that creates a distinct political identity, a political category which also impact not only the state politics, but it also larger repercussions to other distinct identity movement. To conclude, I would say it's require the issues of ethnicity, issues of language and region require more scholarly and nuanced understanding in order to understand the changing patterns and nature and settings of Indian polity, not only from the macro point of view, rather to understand micro as well as region, including regions within regions. Thank you.